insurmountable physical debt hole. There are essentially two ways to fix the problem. Number one, and on one hand, they can cut back on expenditures. Secondly, raise taxes. Or they can do the other. The alternative to cutting back on expenditures or raising taxes is they can devalue their currency. Now, we know that the Super Committee in Washington did nothing to cut back on expenditures. In fact, it was an utter joke watching them play up there like children. Raise taxes, they can't do it. The rich, nobody else. They can't seem to raise taxes on anybody, but they want to talk about cutting them. Now, since those two things have not been done and will not be done, and they never intended for those things to be done, because behind closed doors they had planned a currency devaluation in the first place, and they knew none of those things were going to take place. They paid off all of Washington, D.C., with maybe the exception of Ron Paul. On the other hand, what can they do? Devalue the currency. Let me read it to you right from Ben Bernanke's own words in his speech. It is worth noting that there have been times when exchange rate policy has been an effective weapon. A striking example from the U.S. history is Franklin Roosevelt's 40. Folks, are you hearing the buzzwords? He used the word, first of all, exchange. There is going to be a devaluation. He said, secondly, he gives them out of the devaluation. Folks, you've got to listen to this. A striking example from U.S. history is Franklin Roosevelt's 40% devaluation of the dollar against gold in 1933 and 34. That one sentence is one of the okay, the buzzwords. First of all, there's going to be a devaluation of the currency at 40%. Let's just admit to it. You've got, say, $10,000 in the bank, and it's Friday afternoon, and you've been given no word whatsoever is going to happen on Monday morning. I guarantee you, you will not know in advance what's going to happen. It's going to take place more than likely over a long holiday or a weekend. And when you wake up on Monday morning and get ready to go and see how much money you've got in your bank account, in your checking account, in your business account, whatever it may be, it is going to be cut by 40%. That means if you had $10,000 in that account on Friday, you will have somewhere in the neighborhood of $6,000 only in that account on Monday morning. The currency will be devalued at 40%. Now, let me show you how they're going to do it. He used the example of Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1933 and 34. What did Franklin Roosevelt do in 33 and 4? Whenever these people tell you something, please go and listen to them, folks. I beg of you. They give me these things, I think, because they're old men and they want to clear their conscience. He said in 1933-34, what did Franklin Delano Roosevelt do? He said, bring in, they used gold back in those days. A man would carry around a $20 gold piece in his pocket, which today you'll pay $1,500 for. And they used it to buy groceries and other things. And he said, bring in your $20 gold pieces. It is your duty as an American to help build up the treasury of the United States of America. Go back and look and see what Franklin Roosevelt did. He said, bring in your $20 gold pieces. I will give you a piece of paper representing $20. It was a gold certificate. You don't have them today. You've got Federal Reserve notes today. He actually gave them gold certificates and said, you can take it back to the bank and get $20. The scoundrel, the liar, he knew it had already been planned behind closed doors. I've been told this, that he knew that within a few months' time he was going to take the price of gold from $20 an ounce to $35. Look in history. Go prove this for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it, nor the elitists that have just talked to me recently. You're going to face it soon. You better get ready for it. He took it from $20 a few months later without any warning. Nothing was said. Automatically, he said, we're going to $35 for gold. Figure it. From 20 to 35 is 40%. What did he do? The gold pieces that they had turned in for $20, they could go back to the bank and get $20 for it. They could not get $35. And when they went back to say, you scoundrel, you have ripped me off for 40%, he devalued the currency. This time, they'll merely take the Federal Reserve note, and where it's worth a certain amount on Friday afternoon, it'll be worth another amount on Monday morning, and you're going to have a 40% devaluation. It is coming. Now, what can you do about it? There's really only one thing, and Mr. Fromm told me this many years ago, and I didn't understand what he was saying. He said to me one day, he said, Chaplain, if it's written on a piece of paper, it's worth the paper it's written on. Alex, you've heard me say that over your show over and over and over. I did not know what Mr. Fromm was saying to me at the time, and he basically was saying, Chaplain, if it is not tangible, it's no good. Do you realize that piece of paper has got to be turned into something? If you don't get out of paper, IRAs, 401ks, your retirement funds, you can't depend on Social Security. The amount that you'll be getting will be worth 40% less the next morning after the devaluation. And you think that you can live on it? You're having trouble living on it now? Just wait until then. You've got to get out of paper before the devaluation takes place. What do? It's very simple, as simple as 1, 2, 3. Do you realize that the next morning after the currency devaluation, that gold is going to be worth 40% more than it was the day that you bought it? Now, I know I do not sell gold and silver. You couldn't buy an ounce from me if you tried. Alex can tell you where to go for that. GCN can tell you where to go. All I'm telling you is the facts that have been given to me. You must get out of paper of every kind immediately, because it is going to be worth 40% less, but the gold is going to go up 40%, I guarantee you, within a matter of days after the devaluation.
Okay, Lindsay, let me just give the number out because we're going to take calls when we come back, and I skipped that last network break. 800-259-9231 to get people's take on this. Now, Gerald Celente, who I respect and whose analysis has been spot on, has made the point, I know you've made the point, that we have gotten reprieves. The elite has backed off a few times, and that's actually come out from Jim Tucker's sources mirroring what you'd already reported, and that they are concerned. And we had over 2 million guns sold so far in the month of December, an all-time record. 500,000+ of those, CNN reports, were sold just in the 6 days before Christmas. And so and there was a survey. The reason I know about this, I was listening to Fox News Radio driving in this morning, and they were reporting on the survey, and I pulled up the CNN report on it. But they were saying in the survey, people said because they're worried about civil unrest and that they don't trust the government. I mean, this is mainstream news now. This is being reported. I mean, I heard it on 590 AM. I went and pulled it up. Here's CNN. That's got to shake up the elite. Because, I mean, I can't tell you how many veterans I know. Some of them are young, some of them are old, and they're not looking for trouble. But they're not going to be pushed around like this is Russia or something. I mean, okay, they've trained the police and military to take on, quote, veterans and conservatives and libertarians, and we've gotten the manuals on that. This isn't going to fly. So, I mean, bottom line, from your research, there are ways to turn this around, or are we going into a zone where nothing's going to turn it around?
Well, there positively are ways to turn it around, and I've expressed this to you over the past many years. I've been on your show, Alex. I told you that when I lived with these people, I've said it to your audience over and over, when I lived with these elite for 3 years' time, I mean, I sat across the dinner table from them, lived in the dorms with them, talked to them one-on-one. They were not in my church. I was on their oil field. And there's only one thing on the face of this earth that the elite are scared of. Now, this doesn't come from what you hear or read about in the book. I lived it. The only one thing that the elite are scared of, they are scared to death of the masses waking up. That is the only thing bothers them. Money doesn't bother them. They have the control of it. Congress, they could care less. They control them. The president, he's under that total control.
And that's why they spend all day ridiculing people that say common sense things. And that's why it looks so silly now as they defend all this evil, because they're desperately trying to keep people dumbed down. And now people don't trust them. But the final domino, Pastor, from my research is people still think we're the minority. Lindsay, I'm out there. People recognize me, so I get interaction that regular folks don't get. People are awake, my friend.
They are awake, and they're waking up faster every day, and there are masses waking up out there. And come on, folks, you've got to immediately. You can't wait till tomorrow morning to make preparation. The day after the currency changeover, you are going to see every gun store in America wiped out in 24 hours' time. You mark my words.
No. Just last hour, I realized over the years I've expended most of my ammo. I am going to go tomorrow. I shouldn't even say this on air because I read the record city's Austin for gun sales. I'm going to go buy a mass load of ammo myself tomorrow. Wow. All right, Lindsay, stay there. It's crazy. I hope all this doesn't happen, but it's going from a possibility to a probability. Now, the wake-up may be big enough to back off the system, but they've done a lot of bold stuff. I'm not sure. And they want to start this war with Iran. That'll be a good political diversion for them. We'll be right back with your calls. Lindsay Williams, our guest.
We're on the march.
Well, there's Sun House. That's some old-time blues for you there. Certainly a crazy time to be alive. There's no doubt evil is rising. But for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. All right, Lindsay Williams is here, and he is here to take your calls. We appreciate him joining us. I'm doing a 4th hour today. We got Bob Chapman on the next hour. We'll take calls for your financial questions, geopolitical questions for myself or Bob Chapman. Since we got Lindsay on a little bit late, I skipped a break, and we're going to have him 5 minutes to the next hour. Then Bob Chapman will join us. Then I'm doing a 4th hour today with Max Kaiser, and we've got Gary Franchi, who has that amazing TV ad running, exposing what those of us that know Ron Paul already know. He's obsessed with individualism and not religion or color or any of that. And that's why he's against all these wars and against mandatory drug sentencing and the rest of it. And that's why the system hates him. So we're going to be talking to Franchi coming up and playing that ad here as well. But Lindsay Williams is our guest right now. Lindsay, let's go to the phone calls here. Let's talk to Frank in North Carolina. Frank, you're on the air. Thanks for holding.
Yeah, Alex, thanks for taking my call. I live in a city comparable to Austin, Texas there, here in North Carolina. And I am noticing an increase, like, you know, and Ron Paul supporters being outspoken and calling into radio shows. And it's encouraging to see that he's starting to get some traction.
We're getting reports all over the country of people out with signs on the streets. I mean, look, the system knows he's the front runner, and they're scared. And that's why I know I'm interrupting you before you get to your question, but first they said hackers were going to attack. And then I said, watch, they'll make the counting secret. And now the RNC is taking it to tally it at a secret location, and it's making the tallying at the local area secret. So there's no doubt they're telling you Romney's now in the lead so they can say Ron Paul's 7th place or something. I mean, or they'll do 3rd place or something. They're getting ready to do what they do as criminals. I mean, these are criminals. These are criminals that lie about WMDs, you name it, that have the federal government sticking their hands down your wife's pants to train you you're a slave. They are hardcore criminals. I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, but other than, you know, some outspokenness, some activism on the, you know, the local 50,000-watt station, Alex, I'm not seeing any sign of any awakening at all around here. I mean, the people are complete zombies. They have no clue what's going on, as far as I can see. Now, maybe they're just being quiet about it. But, I mean...
Well, look, let me explain this to you. I am very well-known now. I'm in some well-known movies. Never tried to be in movies. Rick Linklater, nice guy, called up, put me in a few movies. I have been all over national TV. I have millions of radio listeners. Our YouTube channels have over 300 million views. So hundreds of millions of people worldwide know who I am. So I get to have experiences other people don't, because people recognize me, they know me, so they'll talk to me. And I can go out on the street now, and every 3rd person stops and shakes my hand. So there are a lot of people awake. There are also a lot of people who don't feel like they have any power and are just thinking about their car payment and getting home, and you know, they're hungry, and their boss is mean to them. But there's always people who don't count and who are on the sidelines because they don't want to count or don't think they count. But it was 5% won the war against the British. We got way more than 5%. Lindsay Williams, what's your take on this?
You're exactly right, Alex. In fact, you remember back last May, I came on your show and I said price of gasoline or the price of crude oil is going to $150 a barrel. You remember I came back later and said, the elite. In fact, I told him, the elitist on the phone, I said, you really hurt my credibility. You told me it was going to $150 a barrel. Now you're telling me that you're going to hold off for the rest of the summer. I said, what's going on? Well, when I got down to the base of it, I found out they had to back off. They didn't have any choice. You fill up that SUV for $200 a barrel, people begin to wake up. And as a result, they backed off on the price for a while just to keep you out of the loop. They don't want you to know what's going on. They don't want you to get excited. They want to do everything in their power. And then I came back on and I said, you're going to keep the price of gasoline right about where it is for the next number of months. Committee in Washington did nothing to cut back on expenditures. In fact, it was an utter joke watching them play up there like children. Raise taxes, they can't do it. The rich, nobody else. They can't seem to raise taxes on anybody, but they want to talk about cutting them. Now, since those two things have not been done and will not be done, and they never intended for those things to be done, because behind closed doors they had planned a percent devaluation of the dollar against gold in 1933 and 34. That one sentence is one of the okay, the buzzwords. First of all, there's going to be a devaluation of the currency at 40%. Let's just admit to it. You've got, say, $10,000 in the bank, and it's Friday afternoon, and you've been given no word whatsoever is going to happen on Monday morning. I guarantee you, an example from the U.S. history is Franklin Roosevelt's 40. Folks, are you hearing the buzzwords? He used the word, first of all, exchange. There is going to be a devaluation. He said, secondly, he gives them out of the devaluation. Folks, you've got to listen to this. A striking example from U.S. history is Franklin Roosevelt's 40 the devaluation in the first place, and they knew none of those things were going to take place. They paid off all of Washington, D.C., with maybe the exception of Ron Paul. On the other hand, what can they do? Devalue the currency. Let me read it to you right from Ben Bernanke's own words in his speech. It is worth noting that there have been times when exchange rate policy has been an effective weapon, a striking, insurmountable physical debt hole. There are essentially two ways to fix the problem. Number one, and on one hand, they can cut back on expenditures. Secondly, raise taxes. Or they can do the other. The alternative to cutting back on expenditures or raising taxes is they can devalue their currency. Now, we know that the